He was just trying to pick up the pieces of his sketchbook when the bald man kicked his wheelchair. Art. Not a nudge, not a warning, a full, deliberate kick to the side wheel that made the whole chair jerk and rattle. Liam gasped, his arms flying out to keep balance, crayons clattering to the pavement. His drawing, a superhero with glowing fists and a lightning cape, tore down the middle. And then, without even flinching, the man muttered, "HOA compliance, kid," and turned to walk away. That's when Travis stepped in front of him. Calm, cool, unmoving, like something ancient had just awakened. But that's not even the part that shocked the neighborhood. That came minutes later, when Karen Langford herself, the self-declared queen of Willow Ridge HOA, stormed onto the scene in white linen and pearls, pointing a manicured finger at a 10-year-old in a wheelchair and screaming, "You people are ruining the aesthetic of our block." She didn't know everyone was already recording. She didn't know her enforcers had just assaulted a child. She didn't know Travis Carson was standing 10 feet away. What happened next? Well, let's go back to the beginning. Before we dive into this story, we just want to say thank you for being here. If you enjoy true stories where justice actually shows up, please consider supporting the channel. A quick like helps us more than you think, and if you want to see more wild HOA drama, don't forget to subscribe. We post new real-life stories like this almost every day. And tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, we read every single one. Now buckle up. This story's about to go places. Willow Ridge looked like it belonged in a brochure. Clean sidewalks. Neatly mowed grass. American flags swaying over white porches. The kind of neighborhood where people cared too much about holiday lights being symmetrical and kids' bikes being stored in the approved zone. But beneath all the picture-perfect lawns there was one problem. Karen Langford. She wasn't just the HOA president. She was the judge, jury, and executioner. Her clipboard was her badge. Her voice, shrill and slow, was the soundtrack to 100 complaints. Unapproved wind chimes, offensive mailbox color, and recently, visual clutter caused by medical equipment. Her newest target was Melissa and her 10-year-old son Liam. They'd moved in a year ago after Melissa's husband passed. Liam had cerebral palsy. He couldn't walk, but he could draw. Boy, could he draw. Every morning he sat at the end of their driveway sketching superheroes, laser swords, space dogs, whole universes poured out of that kid's crayons. Melissa was just happy to see him smile again. Travis, her old friend from back in her MMA coaching days, had started coming by every now and then. Ever since the funeral, really. He said it was just to check in, but he never left without helping fix a sink or mowing her front lawn. That Saturday started out like any other. Melissa was in the kitchen making pancakes, humming along to some old Bon Jovi track on the radio. Travis sat at the table, sipping black coffee, occasionally muttering about how almond milk was ruining the world. They laughed. It felt peaceful. Outside, Liam was sketching a new hero. This one had rocket fists and armor made of light. His name was Bolt Titan. Then Melissa's phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up. A woman's voice, icy, calm, and unmistakably smug. "Hi, this is Karen Langford, president of the Willow Ridge HOA. I just wanted to give you a courtesy call. There have been concerns about the visual obstruction on your driveway." "Excuse me?" "The wheelchair. And the boy. It's been noted that he's often outside in full view drawing things. Some residents feel it's lowering the tone of the street." Melissa nearly dropped the phone. "Are you serious?" "I'm just passing along what's been observed. I'm authorizing our enforcement partners to visit and assess compliance. They should be arriving shortly." Then she hung up. Melissa stood frozen. Travis looked up. "What's wrong?" She told him. He didn't speak. He just stood tall and stone-faced and moved to the window. Minutes later, a black SUV pulled up. No plates. Tinted windows. It crawled to a stop right at the edge of the driveway. Two men stepped out. They weren't cops. They weren't city officials. But they wore matching polo shirts with Willow Ridge HOA Enforcement Division, printed in blocky white letters. No badges. No names. Just smug posture and mirrored sunglasses. The taller one was bald and wiry, clipboard in hand. The shorter one had a gut and a mean-looking scar on his lip. His radio was off, but clipped to his belt like a costume prop. Melissa's stomach turned. Travis didn't move from the window, but his hand clenched slightly around his coffee mug. Outside, Liam was still sketching, unaware. The bald man approached. "Violation notice," he said without even introducing himself. "Unauthorized object obstructing the shared frontage pathway." Melissa flew out the door. "He's on our driveway," she said. "He's not blocking anything." "We've had complaints," the bald one said, not even glancing at her. "This is a warning. You've got no right to. Karen Langford has authorized this inspection." That name. That tone. Melissa's vision blurred. The heavy-set guy stepped toward Liam. "This wheelchair isn't compliant with ADA integration for neighborhood continuity." Melissa stepped between him and her son. "Back off. Ma'am, we can tow it. Or fine you. It's a child. That's not our problem." That was the moment when Liam looked up, confused, and the bald man muttered, "Shouldn't be out here anyway," and lifted his foot. And kicked the wheel. And everything stopped. Liam's head jerked to the side, his arms flinching toward the wheels. The chair wobbled but didn't tip, thank God. But the sound it made? That horrible scrape of metal and rubber on concrete? That would haunt every parent watching this video. Melissa screamed, "What is wrong with you?" The bald man just shrugged like he'd stepped on a soda can. Liam's sketchbook slid from his lap and landed open on the pavement. One page caught the breeze and fluttered into the street. The superhero he'd drawn, Bolt Titan, was torn down the center. Liam looked frozen. Not crying. Not yelling. Just wide-eyed, lips parted like he couldn't believe what had happened. He looked down at the chair, then at the men, then at his mom. His voice cracked. "Why did he do that? I wasn't doing anything." Melissa was already kneeling beside him, trying to see if he was hurt. "Baby, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Before he could answer, another voice spoke. "I'd stop talking if I were you, Travis." He stepped off the porch like a shadow falling across the sidewalk. Calm. Controlled. Dead silent. You could feel the temperature drop 10 degrees when he showed up. The bald man rolled his eyes. "And who the hell are you?" Travis didn't answer. He looked at Liam first, scanned his arms, then his face. Then his eyes slowly lifted to the man in front of him. "I asked you a question," the bald man repeated. "You kicked a child in a wheelchair," Travis said. "That's not a question." The heavier man moved in. "Look, pal. This isn't your business. You want to get involved, that's your mistake." "I've made worse," Travis said. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't move fast. But it was like watching a fuse burn. Melissa stood too, still shielding Liam. "Call the police," she whispered to a neighbor who had started filming across the street. Phones were coming out now. Curtains twitching. People stepping onto porches. And just when you thought it couldn't get more ridiculous? A white BMW rolled up fast and crooked into the cul-de-sac. It practically leapt the curb and came to a screeching stop. Out stepped Karen Langford. If there were ever a person who looked exactly how her name sounded, it was her. Tan blazer. Crisp white pants. Giant sunglasses. Clutch bag the size of Texas. And a phone in one hand already raised like a weapon. "What the hell is going on here?" she barked, marching across the lawn like she owned every blade of grass. Melissa turned, stunned. "Are you serious right now? Your guys just kicked my son's wheelchair." Karen didn't even blink. Then maybe he shouldn't have been parked where he doesn't belong. The air went sharp. Someone in the background muttered, "Oh no, she didn't." Karen kept going. "I gave them explicit permission to enforce neighborhood standards. That includes visual clutter and ADA non-compliant obstacles." "He's a child," Melissa shouted. "He's your child?" Karen snapped back like it was a curse. "And he's the reason my property value is dropping." There it was. The sentence that would be replayed on TikTok, Twitter, and the 6 o'clock news 1,000 times. "He's the reason my property value is dropping." A gasp rippled across the cul-de-sac. Phones were now held higher. Even the neighbor's dog had stopped barking, like it knew something wild was about to go down. Travis's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Say that again." Karen turned to him, puffed up like she was addressing a waiter who forgot her lemon wedge. "And who are you? Another freeloader she let sleep on the couch?" "I'm the one who's about to give your security detail a lesson in real enforcement," he said, eyes locked on the bald man, who was now clearly rethinking life choices. The heavy guy stepped forward first. "Don't you dare." He reached to push Travis. "Bad move." Travis dodged the hand like it was nothing, stepped inside the man's reach, and with one smooth motion, grabbed his wrist and twisted. "Art." The man yelped and dropped to one knee. Karen screamed, "That's assault." Travis didn't flinch. The bald man lunged next. And Travis? Didn't even blink. One punch. Just one. Right cross. Clean. Brutal. Clinical. The kind of hit you only see in pro fights, and even then rarely this clean. The man's feet left the ground. He dropped like a sack of wet laundry. Out cold. His clipboard clattered to the driveway. His sunglasses flew 10 feet into a bush. He didn't even twitch. Someone across the street shouted, "Holy SH!" Another phone hit record. The heavy man, still clutching his arm, tried to scramble backward. Karen screeched, "You're all going to jail for this." But nobody listened. Not even her own enforcers. Travis stood still, breathing evenly. Eyes calm. Like he hadn't just knocked a man unconscious. Melissa grabbed Liam's hand, pulled him close. Neighbors were out now. 6 or 7 of them, phones in hand, whispering things like, "I knew those guys looked fake," and "Is that Travis Carson?" From the fights. Across the street, old Mr. Hollings had come out on his porch. Vietnam vet. Just nodded, slow and sure, like justice had arrived. Karen looked around and suddenly realized she wasn't in control anymore. And that's when the sirens started. The sirens weren't just a background sound, they were a promise. Karen backed away as 2 squad cars turned into the cul-de-sac, lights flashing, tires squealing just slightly as they came to a stop. The officer stepped out fast, one older and cautious, the other younger, eyes scanning the scene. They didn't need to ask what was going on. It was all there, laid out on the suburban battlefield. One man unconscious on the sidewalk. One groaning, clutching his shoulder. 2 women trying to comfort a boy in a wheelchair. And a mountain of phones aimed in every direction. The older cop's eyes landed on Travis immediately. "Sir, step back." Travis raised both hands slowly, palms open. "No problem. I didn't start this." Karen ran to the officers, heels clicking furiously on the concrete. "Thank God." "Arrest him," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Travis. "He assaulted my HOA officers." The younger cop blinked. "You're the president of the HOA?" "Correct. And these men were acting under my authority." The older cop stepped toward the unconscious guy. "Where's their ID?" Karen hesitated. "Well, they have the uniforms." "Uniforms aren't ID," he said sharply. Melissa stepped forward, voice shaking. "They showed up in an unmarked SUV. No plates. No names. No credentials. One of them kicked my son's wheelchair." That's when everything exploded. The younger cop's eyebrows rose. "They did what?" "They assaulted a child," Melissa said. "And then they tried to intimidate me. When my friend stepped in, it turned physical." The heavy-set guy, still groaning on the pavement, pointed weakly. "He snapped my arm." The officer crouched beside him. "You got a name?" "Derek Mills," the man said. The officer looked over at the other guy, still unconscious. "And him?" No answer. The officer turned to the crowd. "Anybody got footage of the incident?" 10 phones went up at once. One woman, filming from her second-story balcony, shouted, "I got the whole thing. From the kick to the knockout." The older cop turned to his partner. "Call EMS. Get these 2 transported. I want their prints run immediately." Karen was livid. "You're not seriously taking their side?" The officer turned to her. "Ma'am, are you saying you authorized unlicensed individuals to act as enforcers for your HOA without proper documentation, uniforms, or legal authority?" Karen stammered. "They were volunteers." "Volunteers who physically assaulted a disabled minor? That's a mischaracterization." The younger officer picked up the bald man's fake badge from the ground. "This is a laminated printout. No barcode. No seal. No signature. This is a toy." Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Melissa's voice was steadier now. "They threatened to tow my son's wheelchair. They said he was visual clutter." The words hit like a brick. The officer turned cold. "We'll be taking statements from everyone. EMS is en route. I strongly suggest nobody leaves." Just then another car pulled up. Not police. Not EMS. A silver Tesla Model X with vanity plates that read "Karen loves HOA." Karen's husband. He got out, wearing golf shoes, a salmon polo shirt, and the dazed expression of a man who'd only been half listening to his wife's phone rants for the last decade. "What's happening?" he asked. Karen ran to him, flailing. "Arrest them. They assaulted us." But her husband looked at the 2 men on the pavement and then at the crowd, every single neighbor filming, whispering, some laughing. "Karen, what did you do?" "They were parked outside every day. That kid's always drawing weird stuff. It makes the neighborhood look wrong." "Wrong?" he echoed, looking at Liam. Liam, still in his chair, holding what was left of his drawing, his fingers trembling. Travis stood beside him now, one hand on the chair's backrest. "Calm. Protective. Unmoving." Karen's husband looked at the unconscious enforcers again. "You paid these guys?" Karen looked like a balloon slowly deflating. I used discretionary funds from the HOA account. The officer's head whipped around. Did you say HOA funds? Karen realized too late. That's not. I mean, it was for the community. The officer radioed for a supervisor. Liam finally spoke. Mom? Melissa crouched beside him. Yes, baby? Is he going to be okay? He asked, pointing to the unconscious man. Melissa paused. I think he'll wake up. But probably not happy. Liam nodded. Good. Then, for the first time in 20 minutes, he smiled a little. Inside the crowd, someone whispered, She's done. Another answered, Oh yeah, this is going viral. It already was. A woman across the street had started live streaming 10 minutes ago. Her TikTok title read, Karen hires thugs to assault disabled boy, gets ruined by ex-MMA coach. Over 60K viewers and climbing. The younger cop took Travis aside. I recognize you, he said. You're that guy, the fights. Carson, right? Travis nodded, uncomfortable. You've still got it, the officer said. Wasn't about fighting, Travis replied. It was about stopping something wrong. Karen, now visibly sweating, muttered, This is all blown out of proportion. The officer turned to her. You'll need a lawyer. Sirens sounded again. Ambulance. Backup police. It was now a scene. But for the first time since the SUV pulled up, Melissa looked around and didn't feel afraid. She looked at Travis. Thank you. He nodded once. Let's get him inside. And as they wheeled Liam toward the porch, people made way. Karen didn't follow. She couldn't. She was too busy arguing with her husband, her voice shrill and cracking. But no one was listening anymore. The ambulance crew moved fast. Within minutes, the bald man was loaded onto a stretcher, his neck in a brace, an oxygen mask strapped to his face. His partner, Derek Mills, screamed in pain as paramedics tried to stabilize his dislocated shoulder. The streets smelled like antiseptic and blood and the faint sourness of panic sweat. Neighbors had poured out of their homes. Phones were still up. Everyone was recording. Karen stood to the side now, trying to talk into her phone with no reception, red-faced, sweating through her linen jacket. One of the officers pulled a sheet of paper out of the fake badge holder. He held it up and squinted. You've got to be kidding me. Melissa leaned forward. What is it? The younger cop asked. The officer turned the page around. It's a printed-out HOA violation notice template. Like, Word doc clip art level. And at the top? It didn't even say Willow Ridge. It said, HO Authority, Official Compliance Order. In Comic Sans. Karen, the older cop called over, did you approve this document? Karen, still clutching her now-dead phone, snapped back, that's an internal draft. Drafts don't give people the right to assault children, he replied. Her husband just shook his head like he was watching a slow-motion car crash. From the porch, Liam whispered to Travis, Why are grown-ups so weird? Travis crouched beside him. Because some of them forget what real strength looks like. Another officer walked up, holding a tablet. Sir, we've confirmed the identities of both suspects. Kevin Brandt and Derek Mills. Neither are associated with any registered enforcement agency or private security firm. He looked at Karen. They do, however, have a history. Melissa stood beside Travis, gripping Liam's hand. Brandt was previously charged in 2017 with impersonating law enforcement during a parking dispute in Clearwater. Charges were dropped, but the pattern is there. Karen blurted out, I didn't know that. The officer raised an eyebrow. Did you vet them? Karen stammered. They were recommended. By who? She froze. The cop didn't wait for an answer. He turned back to his partner. We're flagging this to the DA. Possible conspiracy, assault on a minor, unauthorized impersonation, misuse of HOA funds. Karen's voice went high-pitched. They were just doing their job. No, Travis said quietly from the porch. They were doing yours. And the silence that followed? You could have heard a crayon drop. Liam squeezed his mom's hand and whispered, I want to finish my drawing. Melissa blinked. You sure? He nodded. He needs his lightning cape. She handed him the sketchbook. Liam flipped past the ruined page and started sketching again. His hands still shook a little, but the lines were firm. Focused. The older officer stepped up onto the porch. Ma'am, he said to Melissa, do you want to press charges? She didn't even hesitate. Absolutely. He nodded. We've got more than enough evidence. The real question is whether your HOA president will also be charged. Karen gasped. This is harassment. The cop tilted his head. You hired two men with criminal records, gave them authority you didn't legally have, used HOA funds without board approval, and authorized them to approach a disabled child with threats and violence. That's not harassment. That's criminal negligence. A woman from the neighborhood shouted. She called the kid visual clutter. Gasp. Murmurs. More phones aimed at Karen. One man in a sleeveless tee muttered, "Hope the internet eats her alive." They would. But it wasn't over. Because just then, Karen made the fatal mistake. She marched toward the porch, face twisted with rage, and screamed, "You people always play the victim. I'm the one under attack here." And that sentence? That one line? That was the moment she lost everyone. Neighbors turned. Someone yelled, "Shame on you." Another woman shouted, "He's 10. Even her husband stepped back. "Karen, stop." She didn't. "He sits outside every morning like he owns the place, sketching these creepy superheroes. That's not normal behavior. That's disturbing." Liam looked up, stunned. Melissa's voice broke. "You're calling my son disturbing?" Karen doubled down. "I'm saying it's not appropriate. Not in a place like this." The younger officer stepped between her and the porch. "Back off, ma'am." She turned on him. "You don't tell me what to do." That was it. The officer raised his hand. "Ma'am, I'm detaining you for obstruction and potential conspiracy to commit fraud. Turn around." Karen froze. No, you can't arrest me. I'm the president." "You were." The cuffs clicked, clean and final. Phones zoomed in. People clapped. Someone even cheered. Karen started screaming. "This isn't over. I'll sue everyone." "Oh." Her husband finally spoke. Quiet. Tired. "No, Karen. You won't." And he turned his back. The officer guided her to the squad car. She kept shouting, but her voice cracked, then cracked again, and finally dissolved into a sob. Liam looked up at Travis. "Is it over?" Travis exhaled. "Almost." Across the street, Mr. Hollings spoke for the first time. "About time someone stood up to that woman." And the crowd? They nodded. They applauded. They filmed. But most of all, they remembered. Because in Willow Ridge that day, justice didn't come quietly. It came with cameras, sirens, fists, and truth. And a kid with a crayon cape. The news hit local stations by 6 p.m. HOA president arrested after hiring fake enforcers who attacked disabled child. The headlines spread like wildfire, shared on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even Reddit. Someone clipped the exact moment Karen shouted about visual clutter, and within 2 hours the video had over 5 million views. Liam became a symbol. People from across the country flooded the HOA's website with complaints. Reporters showed up. City officials launched a formal investigation. Karen was charged with conspiracy, misuse of HOA funds, incitement to commit assault, and obstruction. She pled not guilty, but the videos didn't lie. 3 board members resigned that week. The rest voted to dissolve Karen's presidency immediately. Her husband filed for separation 2 days later. Kevin Brandt and Derek Mills? Both were sentenced to 18 months, with additional probation and a ban on working in any public-facing role. But it wasn't the legal punishment that really stung Karen. It was the mural. 3 weeks later, the local community center unveiled a wall-sized painting. Liam in his wheelchair holding a giant glowing crayon, cape flowing behind him, sketching a superhero into the sky. Behind him stood a tall figure in the shadows, Travis. And in the background, at the edge of the canvas, a small woman with a clipboard turned away in silence. They called it, "The Day the Pencil Won." It was printed on t-shirts, turned into stickers, even raised funds for accessibility ramps in the neighborhood. Liam's drawing? Bolt Titan? It became real. Someone 3D printed it into a figurine and mailed it to the house with a note that read, "Thanks for showing us what real strength looks like." And that's how a kid with a sketchbook, a grieving mother, and a quiet ex-fighter reminded an entire neighborhood what community really means. Justice didn't come from the system that day. It came from people who refused to stay quiet. Sometimes that's all it takes. Even the smallest line on a page can break through the biggest wall. If you found this story worth watching, drop a like and subscribe for more real stories every week. And hey, stay loud, stay kind, and may every Karen get what she deserves.